What is up, everyone? I hope you're all doing well. I've just been doing a bit of routine maintenance on the Tetra aquarium at home, and as always when I'm doing maintenance I get distracted. So someone messaged me, I think on Instagram, I clicked on that, and then all of a sudden there was a YouTube comment, and 25 minutes later I'm still sat here not doing anything with the aquarium. But one of the comments on YouTube intrigued me because it used to get asked quite a lot in the shop. Yeah, quite often we'd get this question, and that is, do I really need to use dechlorinator and like a bacteria booster in my aquarium when I'm setting it up or when I'm doing water changes? And I'll be honest, the answer is possibly, probably. It's a hard question to say, especially when, you know, you lot are from all over the globe. So there will be different things that the water companies are putting into their water, and certain ones will make it harder or easier, and you might be using well water or borehole water. Anyway, for me, I've been keeping fish for 20 years, and I always use them. I think it's just safer. Like, the fact that, like, one of these fish alone in here, well, not one, just like one of the tetras, can cost more than a bottle of dechlorinator. Why wouldn't you use it? That might save that fish's life. And the same with the bacterial booster. A whole bottle of bacterial booster costs the same as like a large tetra sometimes, or, you know, a catfish, maybe a Corydoras. So why wouldn't you use them just in case there is something in your water that's going to remove? Since day one of making fish tanks, building fish tanks, setting up fish tanks, whatever you want to call it, I've always used dechlorinators and tap water safes and bacterial boosters, because I think it, well, as I've said, just makes sense. It's been, crikey, what, 20 years? That's a long old time. I was just thinking about how long I've been keeping fish. That's slightly terrifying. But yeah, anyway, I've been using it since day one because I just find it simpler and easier. What does it cost? Pennies to use per thing. You know, a bottle of dechlorinator costs £5-6, and it will last you for quite a while. So I just think it makes sense. Now, you will hear a lot of people talking about gassing off the chemicals by putting a spray nozzle on a hose pipe or letting it stand for 24, 48 hours, whatever number you want to insert. And yes, it used to work. That was when chlorine was a thing. Now, unfortunately, the water companies that we've got in England and possibly all around the world put other things in there as well. So they put, you know, things like chloramines in there, and different heavy metals end up in there. And unfortunately, these don't always gas off, or they don't bind. So you end up with possibly a cocktail of, well, who knows what sitting in your aquarium. So it's great if you know exactly what's in your tap water. Brilliant. You know, if you've just got chlorine in there, then yeah, great, you can gas it off. But what about all the other stuff in there? I know in England we can ask for like tap water results, so it tells us what's exactly in our tap water. But what if they change it without you knowing? So one day it's chlorine, and then 3 days down the line it's chloramine. So you don't treat your water, and then all of a sudden, you know, your fish have got an infection, or they're stressed out, or, you know, yeah, who knows what could happen. Obviously, a lot of the chlorines and chloramines can burn fish. They can they've got a protective film. What am I trying to think of? Mucus, that's the word. They've got a protective mucus over them, and so that can actually hurt them and burn it off, and it leaves them open to infection. Same as their gills, it can actually sort of burn their gills in a way. It's probably the easiest way to explain it. And you don't want that, you know, just for the sake of, what, 20p, 30p per water change? I don't even know how much it is. It can't be that much, because a bottle's £5-6. Yeah, like, I reckon it's probably 20-30p for every water change I do, if that. Now, some of you will be lucky enough to have like well water or spring water or borehole water or something like that. Brilliant. That makes it easier for you. You're going to have no sort of man-made, or you're not going to put in anything that you don't want in your fish tank, which is great. The only thing I would say with a lot of those water sources, and it's even the same as like rivers and whatever, wherever you're getting your water from, what you can find is it can house different things. So I've had borehole water before that's so high and so hard that you just can't keep anything in it other than like big Malawi cichlids that are just tough to it. And I've also had nutrients and stuff come through. So we had a customer with well water, and the nutrients in there, I think it was phosphate, it might have been phosphate. But anyway, the nutrients were like off the scale. So they do pose their own problems in their own right. I would say even if you've got well water or anything like natural, as it were, I would always still test it. Now, for the good majority of people out there, you're going to be using tap water to fill your aquarium. Now, with that, really, hang on, I'm going to stop that because you probably can't hear what I'm saying. So with tap water, you are going to be wanting to use a good dechlorinator and bacterial booster just to make sure everything's removed. Now, there are hundreds of different tap water safes and deschlorinators out there. Personally, I use NT Labs and have done for quite some time now. I find it good quality, it works, it treats what I need it to treat, and it does what it says on the tin. Both of them work really well, and I've never had any issues with it. That's where a lot of people get their opinions and their favourites from. They've used it, it works well, they keep it going. Now, don't get me wrong, there are cheap and nasty dechlorinators as well. Hang on, I've just got to get this big bit of muck back here, because I've got to go pick Quinn up in a minute. And if I don't get it done while I'm filming, I won't get it done. There we go. So, there are cheap and nasty dechlorinators out there. I have had my fair share of them, I've used my fair share of them, and you can tell the fish just don't really act quite right on it. They're not themselves, I suppose you would say. Now, all good dechlorinators should really get rid of chlorines, chloramines, and they should bind and get rid of some heavy metals as well. So it is clearing and cleaning the water and going to make it safe for fish and the good bacteria you want in your aquarium. Now, the other thing that good dechlorinators do, and I'm pretty sure NT Labs does, it does. So a lot of them have additives in them to help with the fish. Obviously, it's a very stressful time for fish when you're doing a big water change and everything's very stressful. You're moving them around. You're just stressing them out. So those additives in a lot of the good quality dechlorinators, they just help the fish recover. Well, I say recover, it's probably not recover, but they help the fish de-stress after a very stressful time of doing a water change. One debate that happens fairly often, actually, within fish keeping is, do you add the dechlorinator to your bucket or to the tap water that you're pouring in? I've done both. I would always pre-treat the tank, so if you're going to use like a hose pipe or something, I would put the treatment ready in the tank because you don't want to be pouring water in there and then trying to treat after it's gone in. But I find it, in all honesty, easier to treat the bucket of water. So, I'll just put like a cap full of the treatment into the bucket and then carry the bucket over. But yeah, for your initial fill, getting all the water in there, you're probably easier just treating the tank. But once you've got a lot of livestock in there, it's probably better to treat it before it goes in the water, I suppose. Now, as I've said previously, I will use a good bacterial booster as well. So NT Labs do the filter starter, so I just use their dechlorinator and their bacterial booster together. Again, there's loads of different companies out there. That's my preferred one. I find it works really, really well. But it's not a necessity, I wouldn't say. But again, for the pennies that it costs to put that treatment in there, and I say treatment, it's bacteria. So for the pennies that it costs per water change, I think it's just a bit of a fail-safe, a bit of a safety blanket, I suppose you would say. Safety net, probably more than blanket. But if you do knock your filter bacteria back by doing too big a water change or by cleaning out your filter too thoroughly, it just means that, I don't know, you've got that boost back to get it back to where it needs to be, and hopefully then you won't suffer any sort of ammonia spikes or nitrite spikes because you're putting some good bacteria in there after you've stressed a lot of it out and moved it. So I suppose, to sum up a little bit, would I do a water change without tap water safe and dechlorinator and bacteria booster? Probably not. I think the pennies that you use to treat with, like, what does it cost you? Like I say, pennies. That amount of money to risk possibly hundreds of pounds worth of fish. And it's not even the money aspect. They're still living creatures. Do you really want to risk that just for the sake of a £5 bottle of treatment? Probably not. I certainly don't. It's probably actually one of my annoyances where people give advice. Like, that's why I sort of kept this quite broad, because you don't know someone else's circumstances with their aquarium. You don't know what their tap water company puts in. I've seen it so many times on Facebook where people are like, I've never used that for 30 years. Like, we could be causing someone, by giving that advice, I say we, it's not me, but by giving that advice of, no, you don't need to use that, I've never used it in 30 years, you could be giving someone a real hard time in fish keeping, which means then they might leave the hobby, and if they leave the hobby, that's one less fish keeper, and then when they go and talk to their friends, it will be like, oh, I tried fish, they were a nightmare, don't bother keeping them, and we lose another potential fish keeper in the industry, which means the industry doesn't grow. Anyway, I'm going to stop ranting about this. Anyway, I'm not going to get hung up on that, and we're not going to talk about that anymore. But yeah, I hope that makes sense. Like I say, the majority of you, a dechlorinator and a bacterial booster is probably the minimum you're going to need. Some of you might get away with less. I've probably said it in videos before, using a bacterial booster and a dechlorinator, I would say is minimum, and it's like playing it on easy mode. Why are you going to try and do something on a difficulty setting way harder than it needs to be when you can just use dechlorinator and bacterial booster and it makes life so much easier? And especially for beginners coming into the hobby, that makes sense. Like, we want to make it as easy and as inviting and as simple as possible for the people getting into the hobby. And that's where this stuff comes in. Dechlorinator, bacteria booster, job done. You shouldn't really do any less. Sorry if that last bit came across a bit preachy, but it's one of those things. I think if you've done it for years and years and it works for you, crack on. You know, if your fish aren't in pain and they're not dying from what you're doing, super. But for anyone new coming into the hobby, use those two products, get your tank set up with it, and then you can move on from there. There are thousands of other products out there that do a similar job, and there are thousands of other products that do different things. Don't get bogged down in it. Don't get too sort of hung up in this chemical and this chemical and this chemical, and I need all of these different bottles. Like I say, oh, mine have gone. Oh, I've got them over by the tap. But yeah, I use NT Labs Tap Water Safe, and what's it called? Filter Start, that's what it's called. Never remember the names of all these different products. But yeah, I use those two because they're just the ones I use for years and years. They work. My tanks look like this on it. I'm good with that. But anyway, I'll see you in the next one. I'm going to get this tank filled up because, yeah, I've got to go pick... Oh, I haven't got my watch on or anything. Yeah, I've got to go pick up Quinn. Anyway, I'll see you in the next one.